So moving on to the next topic, the Cincinnati Bengals clinched the AFC North for the first time since 2015. And what do you think has been the reason behind their magical season? Nobody expected them to be this good. Everybody was expecting 3 to 5 wins. They shocked everybody. So what do you think it's been?
I'm going to credit mostly their offense. You look at it, Joe Burrow is one of the best quarterbacks this season by far. You look at the numbers, he's tied for 6th in touchdowns with 34. He is among the league leaders in interceptions, has 14, but you'll live with this, thrown for over 4,600 yards. Then you look at the first round, number 5 pick overall, Ja'Marr Chase. He has had an all-world type season. Forget about being a rookie. He's had one of the best seasons, period. He has over 1,400 yards, has 13 touchdowns, actually just broke Justin Jefferson's rookie record for receiving yards in 16 games. So there's no asterisk. Shout out to Ja'Marr Chase for accomplishing that feat. He's been spectacular. And touchdowns, he's number 2 right now in the league. So you have to look at these two guys and just say these two guys have completely changed around the aura, the energy that the Bengals are currently looking at in the grand scheme of things. They're probably looking at every team right now in the AFC and thinking, you know what, we can compete with anyone. We just took out the top dog in the Kansas City Chiefs. Who are we supposed to be afraid of right now? Because they put up over 30 points, but so did we. We have the offense that actually could stack up against the Kansas City Chiefs, and I'm sure that there's no team right now in the AFC that feels that way. Maybe the Bills feel that way personally, but in terms of offense, the Bengals have everything you could want. You have Joe Mixon running back, one of the best running backs in the league. You have arguably the Bengals, who probably have, like I was saying, the best receiving core in the league. T. Higgins, Ja'Marr Chase, Tyler Boyd, his boy, Auden Tate. So there's definitely guys on this roster that can make plays special. Forget about just Ja'Marr Chase. Joe Mixon, again, one of the best running backs in this league. T. Higgins, one of the more exciting over-the-top wide receivers in this league, has missed 2 games over 1,000 yards, 5 touchdowns. T. Higgins is another special character where he came back from the injury and Ja'Marr Chase was kind of slumping, and you still have some people say that T. Higgins potentially could have been the best receiver on this team. But if anyone knows anything, they were doubling Ja'Marr Chase, which allowed T. Higgins to get some separation, and T. Higgins one-on-one on an island is never a good idea. Just ask the Ravens. So I'm going to credit mostly Joe Burrow and the offense, but you look at what Joe Burrow has done, he's been spectacular, and I will give him a bunch of credit for that.
Yeah, I don't think this is rocket science. Get your franchise quarterback. Get an offensive-minded head coach. Get him some weapons. You know, I'll be honest, I was kind of Team Sewell in terms of who I wanted the Bengals to draft. I thought the offensive line was putrid. I thought get protection for Joe Burrow. You already have Higgins and Tyler Boyd, draft a receiver in the second round. But Ja'Marr Chase has taken this offense to a whole nother level. I think this draft pick is going to kind of change how GMs and NFL teams in general are going to look at where they should be drafting receivers, how many receivers they should draft per year, because it looks like you can never have enough. I tweeted out a few days ago, I think the Jets have to use one of their first round picks on a receiver, possibly go defensive player with the first pick, or maybe an offensive lineman. But in terms of the Bengals, it's been Joe Burrow, man. Drew led off some of the stats. He's also number 1 in completion percentage, number 2 in quarterback rating. And while he is up there in terms of interceptions, he only has 15 turnover-worthy plays on the year, which is 22nd among starting quarterbacks. So some of it has just been unlucky. You know, the one that comes to mind, Ja'Marr Chase dropping would have been walking touchdown probably with his speed.
Sure. And
just he got dropped, and the defender intercepted it. So although he's up there in interceptions, a lot of it hasn't been his fault. I think he's a potential MVP candidate. The way he's played these last 2 games, he's the first quarterback in NFL history to have 450 plus yards or 400 plus yards and 4 touchdowns in back-to-back games. I mean, you think about some of the quarterbacks like Brady, Rodgers, Payton, all these guys have never done that. This offense has been taken to just a whole nother level. The ability to have just 2 weapons on the outside that you can't double both of them. And one of them is going to be one-on-one coverage. We saw T. Higgins go for, over 150 yards against the Ravens. And then we see Ja'Marr Chase the next week go for 260 and 3 touchdowns against what's been a really good defense in the defending AFC champions, Kansas City Chiefs, who back-to-back Super Bowls. These are the guys you want to stack up against. And the Bengals have, they played really well. I will say, I don't know if I trust them to make a deep playoff run. I said it on last week's show. I still think they're a year away. They got a little bit lucky. I mean, they ran 10 plays on Kansas City's 2-yard line.
That's true.
I don't think that's going to happen again. If you give Mahomes a minute with a couple timeouts, he's going to go down the field and probably score. So they did get a little lucky, but not taking anything away. The fact that you could beat the Chiefs, there's not many teams in the league that could say they've beaten the Chiefs over the last 3 years. Their defense has also been a little bit pretty average to below average, but they did hold the Chiefs only 3 points in the second half after giving up 28 in the first half. So the fact they're able to go in the locker room at halftime, make their adjustments, really says a lot about the coaching staff and just the defensive players' mindset. So I think the Bengals are still a year away from really being Super Bowl contenders, but the fact that you're already able to beat the Chiefs and Joe Burrow is an MVP candidate in year 2 coming off for torn ACL, if you're a Bengals fan, you should be thrilled.
When talking about the Bengals, you have to look at how great their offense has been this entire time, this entire season. The weapons they have on offense is insane. And to talk about Kansas City, for one, Drew, I'm glad that you mentioned Dalton Tate because he's somebody that's getting forgotten about in the midst of T. Higgins and Uzomah and Jamar Chase and Joe Mixon and Tyler Boyd. But Dalton Tate deserves some credit, man, because he's the one in there in practice. He's pushing these guys to be better because Tyler Boyd and Higgins and Chase are looking at Dalton Tate like, if I don't do my job, this guy can step right in and do it. So I'm glad you mentioned Dalton Tate there. I really appreciate that, Drew. He deserves some credit. I think the best thing about the Bengals win over the Chiefs this past Sunday was that they held them to 3 points in the second half. You talk about the Chiefs having, the Bengals having 10 plays and the Chiefs would have scored with a minute left. I mean, the Bengals held them to 3 points in the entire second half. The Chiefs scored 28. It looked like it was going to be an offensive game. They were going to score like 40-plus points, but the Bengals defense really stepped up, and they got some guys, under-the-radar guys, that they aren't household name like Awuzie and Eli Apple, but they make big-time plays when the moment calls for it. But the reason behind the Bengals' spectacular season has been none other than Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. The duo that won LSU a national championship has also brought the Bengals their first AFC North division title since 2015. Look at Joe Burrow. This guy deserves the ultimate credit. I said it on Twitter. He's better than Dak Prescott. He's better than Lamar Jackson. He's better than Russell Wilson right now. Joe Burrow is a top 8 quarterback in the NFL, and everybody's going to say, oh, recency bias, this and that. Well, okay. The NFL is a year-to-year thing. What have you done for me lately? Joe Burrow took a 4-11-1 team to 10-6 after reconstructing his knee, coming back from injury earlier than expected, playing week 1. He didn't get injured in week 1 last year. He got injured halfway through the year, and he came back ready to go this season. He's thrown for 4,611 yards, 34 touchdowns to 14 picks. He holds the record now for the most yards and touchdowns in a single season by a Bengals quarterback. And he has a higher completion percentage and passer rating than all of those guys. Ken Anderson, Carson Palmer, Andy Dalton, who gets made fun of for being this mid-tier quarterback, but had multiple Pro Bowl seasons when he was with Cincinnati. Joe Burrow is legit. Then we go on to Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase this season has been otherworldly. I wanted them to draft Jamar Chase. I was very high on Jamar Chase. He was my guy. 266 yards against the Chiefs on Sunday, 3 touchdowns. And Joe Burrow isn't the only one breaking records. Jamar Chase has the most receiving yards by a rookie receiver in NFL history, breaking the record that Justin Jefferson set last year. And he's 12 yards away from breaking Chad Ochocinco's record of the most receiving yards in a single season by a Bengals receiver in franchise history. And Chase is also second in touchdowns all time in Bengals history. So Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase both came into Cincinnati and broke records together. The first season together, they broke records. And this offense is only going to get better. This team is only going to get better. This is only the beginning for the Cincinnati Bengals. Tyler Boyd, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins are all young. Joe Burrow, it's only his second season. Joe Mixon is still young. And the Bengals have glaring holes on the roster. They still have to get a better offensive line, a better secondary, better linebackers. Their pass rush and their defensive front is good. But there's still massive holes on their roster. And the fact that they have been this dominant has been a surprise to everybody. Nobody saw this coming. And the sky is truly the limit for this team. And I think Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow are going to be the catalyst for why the Bengals win a Super Bowl in the near future. I think that's in their future.
How soon
So
do
what do you
think that's
guys
going to be?
I was just going to ask, what's the ceiling for them this season? Because I still think they're a year away from being legit Super Bowl contenders. But I mean, they just beat the Chiefs, and I look at the rest of this AFC is they could beat anybody any given week. So what do you guys think is their upside this year? Can they make a Super Bowl run?
They can make it this year. I think they can.
I think they can too. I mean, you have the offense clearly. The defense probably needs a little bit of work, in my opinion. That being said, it's not out of the realm of possibility. The AFC right now is wide open. People are probably looking at the Chiefs and thinking that that's the team to beat right now, but Bengals have been playing really good football. We're going to talk about them later, but the Titans are getting healthy at the perfect time, and they've been able to stay afloat and surprisingly be the number one seed in the AFC right now. So you're looking at the Bills, who've been playing very good football of late. The AFC is wide open, so anything's possible. Bengals definitely could do it.
Joe Burrow this season, comeback player of the year. Jamar Chase, offensive rookie of the year. Zach Taylor, he's not going to be coach of the year, but he definitely deserves some recognition for what he's done in Cincinnati. Their offense is extremely young. Right now, the Bengals currently have the 27th ranked pass defense and one of the worst ranked offensive lines. Imagine if this team was a little bit more balanced. We'd be talking about them the same way we talk about Kansas City with all the weapons they have. The Bengals, like you mentioned, they're probably like a year or two away from being a complete team, but even as constructed now, they can beat any single team on any single given week. And the fact that Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase are breaking these records, I mean, this is something that we are never going to see again. At least, I don't know, or if we do see it, it's going to be in a long time from now. What they have done, what Joe Burrow has done in his second year, what Jamar Chase is doing in his rookie year, this is something that is not going to happen for a long time, and it may never happen again.
It's going to happen when the Jets draft Treylon Burks.
I feel like
just wait on it, man.
Very fortunate of the Bengals to be put in that position where they could get the two LSU boys. You had Joe Burrow obviously go first overall that year prior, 2 years prior. Then you had Jamar Chase at five. People were questioning whether they should go O-line, given the fact that not only was their O-line bad last year, but their O-line is still bad this season. But they go and decide to take Jamar Chase, almost to a degree, start the trend of keeping that connection together. We saw it a little bit with Tua and Waddle, and they've definitely had a connection too, but definitely not on par with what Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow have done this season. So it's definitely one of those duos where you look at and think these two could go down as some of the best quarterback wide receiver duos, especially for what they're doing so young in their career. It's definitely going to be exciting to see what they do. But in terms of the grand scheme of things, I just can't confidently say they're going to the Super Bowl, truthfully. I feel like it's too soon, given the fact that their defense is so spotty in terms of pass defense. And their offensive line, there aren't teams right now that I look at in the AFC that their pass rush defense is so great that I think the Bengals will struggle to pass the ball. I think that offensively they can score on any defense. It does not matter. The Chiefs have been playing great football defensively over these last couple of weeks. Basically, I wouldn't say the entire season because they struggled but early on. But from week 5 on, the Chiefs defense has been spectacular, and they made them look like chumps this past Sunday. So offensively, I don't think will be their issue. I think defensively is where I see them coming to a halt.
The Bengals have not won a playoff game in the last 31 years. That's the last time they won.
Is that the longest win drought in NFL history?
31 years they haven't won a playoff game?
Yep, 31 years.
Was that Boomer Esiason, or am I thinking of something
It might have been Boomer Esiason, and I forgot about him. Joe Burrow in his second season has already broken all the records that Ken Anderson set, Boomer Esiason, Carson Palmer, Andy Dalton. Joe Burrow is on a historic pace, and this is the last point I want to get into. Joe Burrow and Mac Jones are prime examples of why we shouldn't overvalue physical traits. Yes, they matter, but I would much rather like a quarterback who reads defenses at an elite level, who maneuvers in the pocket at an elite level, whose mechanics are fundamentally sound. And this is more so towards Mac Jones because Joe Burrow was the first overall pick. Mac Jones got overlooked because of those things. He was the 5th quarterback taken in this past draft,